Are you interested in learning more about secondary market investing in Saskatchewan? This week on the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, we are interviewing investor Andrew Breker. Andrew also has some really great insight on what can be done to solve Canada's housing supply issue. Hope you enjoy.
This is the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome back to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, your home for all things real estate and all things Saskatchewan. Really excited about today's guest, Andrew Breker, coming all the way from Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Humboldt, near and dear to my heart because back in my radio days, I spent a couple days there. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to diving into your story and then your suggestions on what can be done to address Canada's housing issue. But before we get into anything, just give me a brief introduction of yourself.
Sounds good, Ron. Thanks for having me on here. Always a big fan.
Wonderful. Always good to have a fan who's listened to the podcast and now is a guest. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. So a little bit about myself. My name's Andrew Breker. I grew up on a farm just outside of Munster, Saskatchewan, which is about 8K out of Humboldt here. Pretty normal stuff. Out of high school, I went to a year of university and realized that sure wasn't for me. I went to play some football and then, saw a lot of guys who had 5 years of schooling, playing football and no degree to show for it. So I kind of thought, my gosh, I got to do something. So I walked on to a construction site and asked for a job and I got one. So then I did construction with that same company for 5 years. We did right from footing to finish. So lots of good experience there in the construction industry. In 2014, I was feeling really a little left behind. I was, busting my ass, $16 an hour, that type of thing. So I approached my boss and I asked him, hey, he had this concrete pile drilling rig. And I said, hey, I'm just feeling a little behind here. I'd either like to run the rig and get a big raise or buy the rig off you. So he was like, oh, perfect. I'm looking to get out of it. So he sold me this drilling rig and it was really nice. It went really smooth and he let me work for him when I wasn't drilling because it wasn't a full-time gig. So I kept working for him. That was in 2014, kind of close to the tail end of the last boom in Humboldt that kind of shut down a bit in 2015. That did give me kind of my first real taste of money, right? Going from $16 an hour to when I was running the rig, you were making over 300, and just it gave me my first real money to play with in investing. First thing I did was that January I went to Thailand and blew all the money I made. So I realized, holy man, need a new business model. So then I always wanted to be in real estate. I actually owned a house when I was 19 back in 2010. And I rented it with buddies and then I rented it out fully. And then I sold it in order to buy the skid steer, the dump trailer, put money down on the rig. So I always knew that I kind of wanted to be in that game. I was always interested in it, always reading about it, listening to podcasts on it. So that gave me my first real taste of money where I could save everything I made on the rig. And then I was just putting conventional 20% down at that time on up and down duplexes, mostly in Humboldt. Started with a couple other things, did a duplex in Vonda, a condo in Saskatoon. But then you could go out and pick and choose an up and down duplex in Humboldt for $100,000, a little over 100 most of the time. So that was, so I started doing that. I built up to 12 units. At this time I had gone on my own doing flat concrete work and the drilling. And so I was subsidizing one with the other. And then I became the village foreman of Munster. I did that for 5 years. I stopped doing flat cement work. I kept drilling, but I took on that. So that helped me learn a lot about infrastructure, a lot about people, a little bit about municipal politics. That too was just a wealth of experience. And then after about 5 years of that, I just was having this internal crisis. This village job would have been a great job to have when you're 50 years old, financially free. You never want to fully retire because your brain will go to shit. So I thought this would be the perfect little hobby job, but I'm too young to be, having this $2,700 a month job for my the rest of my life. So I talked to one of my business partners who we were invested in 4 units together at that time. And I said, hey man, like I want to go hard in real estate. I want to become a full-time real estate investor. So we discussed, and well, what can we do? Where can we, what kind of deals are we going to find? And that led me to looking into the Humboldt Mobile Home Park, which was severely dilapidated. There was only 8 homes. I'm pretty sure the city was ready to buy it out and bulldoze it. But there's 8 homes paying pad fees already. We got it for a really good price. It came with an additional 4 acres of land. So we thought, here it is. This is where I'm going to put my worth in as a full-time investor. We had no previous experience in mobile homes or mobile home parks. So that was a trial by fire learning curve right out of the gate, right? We thought, oh, we're just going to find homes for free, old crappy homes. We're just going to bring them in and rent them. Well, there's city things involved. There's permits, there's inspections. So we bring this and we go out and we buy 5 of these crappy homes for, a few grand each. And then we got to deal with them all. So we bring the first one in. We start renovating it. We had some contractor issues. That was right at the start of COVID when the price of everything was going through the roof. And we're standing there 3/4 of the way down this reno, and oh my God, we're going to be into this mobile home for 75 grand, and it's a 1973 mobile home. The moves were triple what we thought. The hookups, there's so many little moving parts that you don't pencil in. And then we're like, and you can go out, and then we're looking, you can buy a 2010 for 75 grand. Needs minimal work. Banks won't lend on the old ones easily. They're expensive to insure. It's about 2/3 the price to insure an old one than it is a new one, and at half the price, for half the value. So we found out real quick that no, we can't be bringing these old ones in. We got to find these mid 2000s ones. You can get a 25-year amortization on the mortgage. Insurance is $80 a month instead of $300. And it's a way better product, right? 2x6 walls, vinyl windows, better furnaces. So that was a big time learning curve there. And then on the side also, we were doing some BRRRRs, but the buy, renovate, refinance, repeat on some single family and small multifamily. So we got up to we got it up to 48 units through that over the course of a couple of years. And then the only reason I knew of Trevis was from your podcast. And then we had some modular 6-plexes for sale that we weren't allowed to put in our mobile park. And Trevis had phoned me talking about dealing on these. And then we just got to chatting back and forth. And he took me on his Rentalman's cruise in Melfort, and I took him on mine in Humboldt. And randomly then he calls me one day. He's like, hey, there's these 9 mobile homes in Estevan that we could buy for a good price. So I drove down there with him to Estevan, and we ended up making this deal on 6 4-plex modulars, which we did get permission to put into the mobile park, and then 3 single families. So got kind of rolling with him a bit. We so now we're up to 34 units in the park. There's 44 pads, so gone from 8 to 34 through no shortage of headaches. And then so with Trevis, then we picked up 2 18-unit apartments, a couple other single family, and we're closing on a 10-plex in Shaunavon on the 4th of May. So a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pipe, but yeah.
So amazing. I wanted to hop in so many times there and kind of give you a congratulations or a pat on the back, because it's so great to see this evolution of you as an investor, where you start off with the one house and sounds like you were house hacking it, which is great advice for anyone who's not in real estate yet. It's a perfect way to get into the game, but how you've really reinvented yourself as an investor along the way a few different times. And I think that's so Cool, and great to see it stay fresh for you. So just hats off to you and your success so far. And as you can continue to grow, it'll be exciting to see where you go in the next couple of years. I wanted to just ask a question that kind of came to my mind as you were chatting about this, and I think it's an underrated thing about Saskatchewan real estate, that if you're a boots on the ground person in a community like Munster, Humboldt, Alford, wherever you are, if you have the ability to act in those areas, because you're not seeing a lot of outside investment in places like Saskatoon and Regina, you're getting people from out of province. If people live in Saskatoon and Regina, that's our major population centers, people are drawn to invest there. But if you have the ability to be the guy in some of these secondary or smaller markets, you can have wild success. And I think it's a testament to kind of what you're doing. And as you're talking about these properties in Shaunavon, just walk me through what it's like being a small town investor in Saskatchewan, and maybe what you think are the pros and cons of that.
So, well, for sure, one of the cons is that you're not, if you're heavily invested in one area, you're at the mercy of that area's market. However, like Saskatchewan is just so promising all over, especially the cities are full, spilling out to the secondary markets and even spilling out to the smaller markets yet. Um, there's a lot of pros. The people, you can see it for yourself, what's going on, what's going wrong. The people, right? There's lots of times where there's people that have a bad track record in houses. Or there's people that hey, these are good people. They come from a good family. They're going to be good tenants. And also finding deals. You just have that a major edge. Most of the deals we do are off market. We do sneak in and find some deals on the MLS as well. But it's just like, look at this house. You can tell this house is multifamily and you can see that it's vacant. What's the story? You pull the title, you can talk to a realtor, you can find that person's information, and often they are looking to do something with it. Um, Another one we had bought in two houses in a row, an up and down duplex that I owned, and then our corp bought a single family beside it. Well, there's this great big old triplex beside that. And we always talked and talked. Oh my gosh, we got to figure that out. We got to figure that place out. And then, like talking about it for a year without actually pulling the trigger. And then so finally, I actually had one of the tenant next door. He was kind of my guy who was keeping an eye on things in those three units. I said, just go over and knock on the door and figure out who owns that place. And so they knocked on the door. They got me the name of the property manager, who I phoned, and it was owned by a guy he was in BC somewhere. But so I phoned him, and boom, we made a great deal, undervalued. We put about $5,000 to clean up into it, and we ended up pulling all of our money back out through the Burr method. So there just is a huge advantage to being on the ground, seeing what's available, seeing what's empty, seeing where things need improvement. Like that was the same with the mobile park. It wasn't listed, but you just look at it. It's like the grass is knee high. There's only 8 homes left. What's going on? So we went in and we actually found an old listing for it, which got us the information for the previous owners, which were two realtors out of Penticton, who had bought that during right after BHP had announced. And they had I think it was a tax shelter for them. They were probably making that sweet realtor money out there. And yeah, so we got our way into there for a good price too. But Saskatchewan, I wouldn't be that scared. Obviously, there's some towns that you can see they're really on the way out. But especially for someone who's local and sees this, you can buy a nice house for $75,000. Boy, like even in your own local community, I wouldn't be scared of that if there's people looking to move and if there's not a pile of vacant houses.
Right. And the beautiful thing about your neck of the woods, and I would throw mine in there as well, is there's such great employment opportunities. And a lot of it is tied to the agriculture industry, which is very steady eddy. You don't see big highs and lows. And so as an economy, Saskatchewan's in a really good place. And secondary markets, specifically like a Melfort, a Humboldt, a Tisdale, they're really positioned to produce well over the next little while. Kind of taking the conversation back and chatting about tiny homes, mobile home parks. And tying this into what's happening right now in Canada, which I think is pretty broad, no matter what province of the country you go to right now, there is a lack of supply. We have introduced a lot of new people to the country. We are seeing a lot of people move interprovincially as well. I think the other day I saw a stat that Saskatchewan's population grew by 2.3%. And I would even project that we're probably on pace nicely for that coming up here in 2024. Now, with not a lot of homes being built, this starts to really constrict the supply that's available for people to live. So what's your take, Andrew, on what can be done to address this shortage of properties? And are you currently in the solution right now? Or like in kind of the projects that you're working on, are these things that you could see at scale could be done to help address some of these problems?
Yeah, like absolutely. We like to think so. Um, in the late '70s, there was a population boom leading into the '80s, right? And they solved that problem with mobile homes. New homes were, they weren't very good, but they became way better at that point. And that's when almost all the mobile home parks that are currently in this province, that's when they popped up from 75 to like 84, right? So that's the method they used to solve that housing crunch at that time. Now, in those days, a mobile home community was like that was a vibrant little community. Everyone knew each other. It was a, it was a good low income place to be. Now, over time, as those parks got ran down, mismanaged, the houses start falling apart. Obviously, there's now this real big stigma around mobile homes and mobile home parks. Also, they often get bought up by large companies, and those companies know that they can siphon the money out through the pad fees, and they're sitting on a valuable piece of dirt anyways, right? So there is this big stigma, even with banks. Banks don't like to lend on someone to purchase a mobile home in a mobile home park because they're kind of at the mercy of the owner of the park. Now, if it was run properly, that is still a very good answer to the problem. And I really think that something is going to come along that's a rebranded mobile home park, right? Whether it be a tiny home village, maybe they start 3D printing houses, but I'm almost sure that it'll all follow that same kind of structure. Now, you could even look at in Saskatoon, there's a new wood frame condo going up every month, it seems like. And a wood frame condo is essentially a mobile, it's the same kind of structure as a mobile home park. You own your unit, but you're at the mercy of the board to maintain the exterior of the property. Um, you know, it's a very similar concept, but it doesn't have a stigma attached to it. Banks will go lend on a wood frame condo all day long, but if that wood frame condo goes to shit, guess what? The owners as a collective are on the hook. They're going to do a cash call. So a mismanaged condo is, can be a little sketchy as well. So whether they would come out and start developing tiny home communities, new mobile home parks, more modular type builds in communities, a lot of that they're still going to be pad fee, condo fee, but they're going to I really think that they're going to come up with a way to remarket um, mobile homes and the pad fee, and it's going to be a great solution to the problem, and it can be run well, and it can be an extremely nice place to call home.
When I think of mobile homes, I traditionally think of a property outside of the city that's quite far away. Now, I know in Saskatoon specifically, there are some mobile home communities that have been kind of built around. Now, if you were to project this to the future, and if we could take really any city in Saskatchewan, if we were to set up a mobile home, is this something along the lines, Andrew, where you would just state this new neighborhood that goes beside the existing city is now mobile home setup or high density tiny home, or is it something that it continues to be far outside the city and then the city will just eventually grow into it? And do you have any opinion on the pros and cons of having mobile homes directly in the city versus a little farther out?
Well, everything's better in the community, in the city. I just think I mean, this stigma on mobile home parks, it extends to the municipal governments as well, right? If you go to your municipal government and you say, "Hey, I want to start a mobile home park in the middle of Saskatoon," they're going to tell you to kick rocks. Now, if you came with this really fancied up tiny home community, like that might be something that they'd say, that they, oh, how, how progressive, how, what a great way. Oh, these look really good. It's all about, it's all about how it's marketed. You're going to always have a tough time pitching a mobile home park inside of a city, but you could easily, well, again, going back to modular built condos, which are all over in the city. There might come a time where they're like, "Ew, you're not putting a condo in the middle of our city," And again, that's a stretch, but it's a similar type of concept. It's just a very accepted one, right?
There's a density issue that we pop up when we're talking about supply, and that the value of the land is a big consideration, and the amount of permits and stuff that go through that. And so the ability to create more density housing is better for the builder, more cost effective for the person who's getting into that property. So I think you're making a valid point that even though there's a connotation around a mobile home, if you were to do a little marketing, and in a lot of cases, from what I've seen online, a lot of tiny homes are essentially a version of a mobile home. They're just, usually a little higher. There's usually a second story involved, where a mobile home is traditionally almost like a shipping container layout style, long and rectangular. And so, even in the industry, I think if there was a little alterations to the way some mobile homes are put up, and I'm sure that's happening as well. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses over this next little while.
Absolutely, because yeah, like uh, in the middle of a city, the yeah, the amount of land you need becomes a problem. But if you really stuck them in there, and like you said, there's a couple companies that are building really nice, like multi-story ones, like that's, and you say, look, we can build these things. We can build a home a week in the factory. We'll have a neighborhood there over the summer. You know, they might really like the idea of that.
Yeah, I really think that's a great idea, and a way that you can get people into affordable properties. And if there's a possibility of, owning a home and not just having to rent for a significant amount of time, it's a powerful concept. Give me an idea where you currently are and what you're projecting forward, Andrew. If what projects are on the go for you guys as you kind of move into the next phase of your investing career.
So we do have this excess land, this extra land that came with the mobile park that's across the street from it. So we're looking at a couple different options there. If it's zoned R2, so we would have to, if we wanted to do mobile modular, which that would perfectly fit the bill, because I mean it's right across the street from the our current mobile home park. Um, so whether we change that to try to get that changed to R5, which is Humboldt zoning for mobile modular. Um, we also have Sask Housing is liquidating a lot of their duplexes and single family homes. So we have talked with Travis. He's the master of moving. We have talked about with him also about possibly doing almost like an old Sask Housing development there, which also wouldn't look out of place because the next block over is those duplexes and single families. But there will be a little legwork with the city on that front. Just getting that all changed, working with them to get the infrastructure in place because it's unserviced over there. Um, and then, keep looking for deals around the province, mostly in secondary markets, because that's the best bang for your buck.
I want to take it back to what your initial answer, and kind of walking through your journey. And I'm interested to what you'll say on this. I like to ask everyone who comes on, what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself? Now, you've gone through a lot of different iterations and a lot of learning, and so I'd imagine there's a lot of gold that's been found within that learning. But if you could go talk to 19-year-old Andrew as you're in that first property, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, well, I would tell him that the market's going to start sliding in 2015 and then come flying back in 2022. But no, other than that, I think, something that would have really helped me back in the day, even if it's more on a personal side, is not sweating the small stuff, right? A guy can build up so much stress over things that don't really matter in hindsight, right? And I mean, a guy did that. Everyone, lots of people, especially younger people, they get all wound up over something that's either a fixable problem or it doesn't matter. So that would maybe be one little piece of advice. Another one would maybe be like, the dream of being stress free and sitting on a beach drinking margaritas. That ain't that ain't a goal, right? You can only do that so long. So just get out there. Don't be afraid of the risk, right? When you're young is the time to take risks, because you can always recover in your 30s, even in your 40s. So get out there, take the risks, take on the stress, handle it as best you can, and keep trying to fulfill your true potential, right?
Wonderful. I think both great pieces of advice. Thank you for that. And lastly, Andrew, if someone has a question about getting into the Saskatchewan market, or if they're looking at partnering with you on a deal, or they're just curious to have a chat with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I am going to jump back, Ron, real quick, just because I have one more thing that I always say now, and I wish I would have been able to tell myself this. Saskatchewan is still the Wild West. History's not over, right? It's still being settled to this day. So seize the opportunities you get there, because if you don't, the people who get screwed over are generally the people that are already there. So when a new system comes in, you better get out and get what's yours, or you're going to get run over.
I've never heard that one before, but I like that.
Yeah. And then, so ways to find out more about us and what we're doing. We have a Facebook page, Breker Properties, our website, brekerkunstproperties.ca. And then, you can get our names and numbers off there. Feel free to reach out to me on social media. And if you have any questions or deals. And then, did you say things we're looking for as well?
Absolutely. Yep. Throw it in there.
Well, maybe you can help me with this, Ron. We're always looking for mortgage brokers. We've never really dealt with mortgage brokers. It's really difficult to find a good broker who understands the investment game. So we're always looking for a real investment-minded mortgage broker. We have a couple of our big projects that are, we've got them wrapped up. So we're going to be looking for a refi on some of these big projects. And as you know, lending's harder and harder these days right now. So we're always looking for.
I will, because everyone watching this is now kind of wondering. I'll throw it out there. If anyone is wanting to be a big investor in Saskatchewan, at a certain point, there's always going to be an off ramp towards the credit union. If you're in a bigger market like Ontario or BC, there are more lending options available for you on the commercial side. In Saskatchewan, the credit union runs the game. And I've actually learned this a lot from Travis himself, is going to those local credit unions where you're trying to buy a property. And oftentimes they're going to have the ability to help you with that. So I'm sure you knew that, Andrew. I would say on my specialty, if
we learned that through the trial by fire, man.
someone's looking for advice from me on purchases, it's really like I do an awesome job of helping people get into that first 1 to 5 properties. That's really my domain, but I always like helping connect people with different people that I've met as well. So that's not to say that you can't call me and say, hey, can you give me a recommendation of where to go here? Happy to do that, but really my bread and butter is the 1 to 5.
No, that's all good, man. And I'm sure you've helped a lot of people get their first few investment properties under their belt. So that's awesome.
I love chatting to 19-year-old Andrews and getting them to that first house. Perfect. That's game changing.
No, right on, man. That's really good. But
yeah, I was just gonna say thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. I think you're an incredible young guy, and I think the future is incredibly bright for you. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your perspective.
No, thank you so much for having me, Ron. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. I hope you liked it, found some value here. If you did, please consider subscribing. If you're in the market for a purchase, renewal, or refinance, I'm a licensed mortgage broker and would be happy to help you with your next transaction. Until next week, I'm Ron Caroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional. Bye for now.